Welcome back to the 10-second runoff powered by Culture Media with your host, Joe Mitchell, producer Magic Mikey Shiaza.
We out here, boy.
Let's go. Let's go. Hey, we got week 9 of college football here last weekend of October. The first two months of college football feel like they just absolutely flew by. We got a month left of the regular season. We got, 3-4 weeks left of the regular season before we get into conference championships, bowl season, and the playoffs. So college football playoff rankings should be out shortly. But before I get into that, something I failed to do like a rookie on the Sunday night show is give my top 10 power ratings. So I'll pull that right up for you. And we already put them out on Instagram, and I took a lot of heat, as did Alec. Alec took the most heat this week. He went from being loved and adored to just crushed.
He was hated this week for sure.
Oh, he was hated. There's no doubt about that. Let me run down my top 10. At number 1, I had Michigan. I'm still getting hate for that. People want to see Georgia be number 1. I think you'll see this weekend why I don't have them number 1. And if I'm proven wrong, then you'll likely see Georgia at number 1 next week. I just don't think Georgia has won dominantly enough. I think they're a very good team. They're very likely going to end up in the college football playoff again. I expect to see them in Atlanta for the SEC championship game. But, we'll see. I think Florida is a team that what's the line set at? I want to say the line's at 14.5.
14.5. Yeah,
so the line's at 14.5. I wouldn't be surprised to see Florida cover that. We'll get into that later. So I have Michigan at number 1. Also, me having Michigan at number 1, on any other week, it might have been the biggest controversy surrounding Michigan, but it's not. They got some stuff going on over there that I'll get to in just a second. At number 2, I had Georgia. Just gave my piece on them. At number 3, I have Ohio State. The way Ohio State was able to go out and get that win against Penn State last week was impressive to me. I think Penn State, I know we already covered this game, but I think Penn State kind of lost that one more than Ohio State went and won it. But Kyle McCord did his thing. Marvin Harrison Jr. played well. And props to the Ohio State defense, holding Penn State to as little points as they did. So they're my number 3 team in the country right now. At number 4, I have Florida State. Again, they're the only unbeaten team in the ACC right now. They're a gritty, tough team. They find ways to win. Even when they struggle against teams they shouldn't, they've always found a way to win. They're still going to have to play Duke. And we'll see how all that ends up playing out. So, number 5, Washington. They just played Duke. I'm tripping. They just played Duke. Down going into the fourth quarter of that game and dominated in the fourth quarter. All right, 5. I have Washington at 5. Still undefeated, but they tried to lose. They tried to lose last week. I think Washington's really good. Michael Penix Jr. struggled last week. I think that was more of a one-off thing than you will see moving forward. He's dominant. That receiver room's really good. The running back room has really come around. If their defense can step up and play like they did in the Oregon game and come up big on third down, situational defense is going to be so important for them as we get into November and towards the end of November even. So I think the biggest thing for Washington is, can their defense step up and be the defense that the offense needs them to be? Because the offense, despite this week, let's throw this past week out the window because they didn't score a touchdown offensively, which is crazy to say about that Washington team because they're so powerful offensively. It was just a really weird game. I think Arizona State just kind of had their number, and not making excuses for Washington, but I think moving forward, they're going to be fine offensively. Number 6, Penn State. I still have them at 6. I know the AP has them at 10. I have them at 6 because I genuinely think they're better than the rest of the teams that I would have behind them. This is a power rating. It's not a ranking system. If I were ranking teams, I would have a few other teams. I'd have Oklahoma above them. I'd have Oregon above them right now. But in a power rating, I think Penn State's probably better and would be favored on a neutral field over those teams. At number 7, I have Oklahoma. The thing for me with Oklahoma, I think they're a really good team. I think they have all the potential in the world to get to and through the Big 12 championship game, which would likely have them in the playoff. Dylan Gabriel has been solid for them. The receiving room has been solid for them. That offense has been great. The defense has been better and much improved than they were last year. But my biggest concern with Oklahoma and why I have them at 7 and not higher is they fail to run the ball efficiently. And I think that is going to be a problem when opposing teams can get true pressure on Dylan Gabriel. And I'm not saying Oklahoma can't run the ball. I'm just saying they haven't done it efficiently. So I think that could be the thorn in their side as the season continues to progress late into November. Look, in the Big 12, there's still a couple teams that are interesting. Kansas State's over there, and they could potentially find themselves backdooring their way into the Big 12 championship again. Not making that prediction, just saying there's some interesting teams over there. Number 8, I have Oregon. I still think Oregon is a really, really good team. They very well could have won that Washington game. Had they just made the field goal and gone to overtime, you and I don't know what would have happened. But I think Oregon defensively is a really good team. Bo Nix he's going to be starting his 55th game in college football. That'll be the most ever from college football player. That is a lot of football. Starting every game since his freshman year is crazy. I think Oregon's really good. They have two wide receivers over there that have been great for them. Troy Franklin is unbelievable. Bo Nix, like I said, is fantastic at the quarterback position. That's why he started the most games of any player ever, or will have after Saturday. The running back room, Bucky Irving, solid. This is a hard-nosed, physical, big football team that plays smart and they play well. I think Oregon, not necessarily out of the college football playoff conversation, certainly not out of the Pac-12 championship conversation, but we'll see what happens this week with Utah. We'll cover that game shortly. At number 9, I have Alabama. Alabama's a one-loss team. The only loss they have right now is to Texas. They have wins over Ole Miss and Texas A&M, 2 really big wins for them. I have them at 9 right now, and you won't see too much movement from Alabama in next week's power rating, but in the following week, after they played LSU, it's going to be very hard for me to leave them at 9. They will either be moving up a significant amount or dropping. And again, currently I have Alabama above LSU. I have Alabama in my top 10 power ratings. I do not have LSU in, so that means as it sits, I'm favoring Alabama in that game. Defensively, Alabama's really good. Again, I heard somebody say that Alabama has not run the ball extremely well this year. I think that I heard somebody say that, and I believe that they said that just looking at the statistics. In the NFL, they remove sack yardage from, total rushing yards. They should do that in college as well, because Jalen Milroe has been sacked a whole lot this year. And whenever you remove that sack yardage, or with the sack yardage, I want to say they have Alabama rushing just around 3 yards per carry. You remove that, they're rushing over 5 yards per carry, which is great, which is really, really good. So that being the case, I'm going to take an opposite stance of that. I think Alabama runs the ball really well, and they run it a lot. So they have the potential to control time of possession in any game they play. And I think the mistakes that you saw Alabama make versus Texas are handled at this point. We'll see what happens in that LSU game, and depending on the outcome of it, we'll see Alabama move in my power rating. At number 10, this one was very, very controversial. Because it's not Texas at 10, I have Ole Miss at 10. Jackson Dart's been playing out of his mind this year. He's been passing the ball really, really well. You've seen Quinshon Judkins come around, have some really, ever since that LSU game, he's been rushing the ball really well. The offensive line has come together. They've been able to find some holes for them. And while the defense is not elite by any means, it's good enough to give the offense the cushion they need. I think this is a really, really good team. I think Lane Kiffin is a great offensive mind, and you put all those pieces together, and this is a tough, nasty team right now. We've talked about it a little bit before on this show, but one game that people have not been talking about enough, which I understand because there's games going on this weekend, the following weekend, like there's games in between, but Ole Miss has to go to Georgia later in the year. If Ole Miss can find a way to beat Georgia in Sanford Stadium, Ole Miss is going to clinch the SEC West. Look, right now they have the win over. Right now, Ole Miss has a loss to Alabama. But if Ole Miss goes and hold on, help me out here. Right now, Ole Miss they have the loss to Alabama, and that's their only loss on the schedule. That's their only loss right now. If they go to Georgia, they will have beaten Georgia. They will have beaten LSU. But with the loss to Alabama, that would have – okay, so if Georgia and Alabama both win out, Alabama will go. But if Alabama finds another loss on their schedule, then Ole Miss very well could find themselves in the SEC championship.
So next week, Ole Miss is rooting for LSU heavy.
Yeah.
Because they already beat LSU, and then if Bama beats LSU, then –
yeah.
Well, yeah, then their playoff chances or SEC chances are gone.
Yeah. Yep. Okay, that being said, you said next week Ole Miss will be rooting for LSU heavy. Speaking of rooting for teams that you don't play for or cheer for, Georgia will be playing Florida this week. Tennessee is cheering for Florida hard this week. Tennessee is cheering really, really hard for Florida because, as it sits, Tennessee has 2 losses. Georgia, so Tennessee's losses are Florida and Alabama, both SEC losses, which really, Tennessee's losses are Florida and Alabama. Georgia has no losses in the SEC. So if Tennessee is going to try and find a way to backdoor their way into the SEC championship, they need Florida or Missouri to beat Georgia, and Tennessee's got to go get it done against Georgia themselves. No, we're not talking about Tennessee right now. I'm just saying there's an opportunity there, and I think this Georgia-Florida game is going to be a little bit closer than the spread has it. That being said, the spread for this game is Georgia minus 14.5. I don't love that spread. When I look at games that Georgia has struggled, and mind you, Georgia will be without Brock Bowers. Do I think that Brock Bowers is make or break for this Georgia team? Not necessarily. I think he's a huge piece. But I think Georgia can be looking all around for, I think Georgia can be looking all around for that player to step up. And I don't think it has to be the tight end that's stepping in for Brock Bowers. I think it can be anybody on this offense or defense for that matter. Florida's really struggled on third down. Florida's really struggled on third down defense. They don't get to the quarterback a lot. They haven't been great at sacking the quarterback. So I think this is a situation where Georgia can trust Carson Beck to go out there and make some decisions on third down, and that is going to be really, really important for Georgia. That being said, look at the games that Georgia has struggled in. Let's look at Auburn. What happened? Peyton Thorne. You see Peyton Thorne. You saw blanking. What's the running back's name at Auburn? Why am I blanking on that? It doesn't matter. You saw Auburn run the ball very effectively with the read option, with the power, with the misdirection and the zone read. Auburn brought it to Georgia early and often in that game, where you saw guys making contact and falling forward. Jarquez Hunter. You saw guys making contact and falling forward on multiple occasions. And it looked like Georgia was not prepared for that. Defensively, Auburn came out playing hard. You saw the pick. You saw forced fumbles. Georgia put the ball on the turf way too much in that matchup. I think that is the key in this game for Florida. If you can run the ball effectively, like they did against Tennessee, those types of games. If Florida can run the ball effectively and Graham Mertz can play efficient football, efficient, mistake-free football, Florida's going to find themselves in a game in the fourth quarter. We've seen Georgia struggle already this year. I do think they're one of the best teams in the country, and I do like them to win this game outright. But I think we have a ball game in the fourth quarter. I don't like this 14.5-point spread. If I was setting this line, I'd set it somewhere between 6.5 and 10. I could very easily see this being a one-possession game. And if it's not a one-possession game, I expect it to be no more than 10. So I think this one's a very, very interesting one. Do you have any thoughts on that?
No, I think you said it well. I agree, 100%. I think it'll be a close game in the fourth quarter. I would love to see Florida win. I think that would be electric. But I do think Georgia finds a way to win it.
All right. All righty. All right, well, moving on. Michigan's on a bye, but they're still getting all the talk right now. This isn't your first time hearing this, obviously, but Michigan is being accused of sign stealing, but to a extreme extent. There's a staffer over at Michigan by the name of Connor Stallions who allegedly attended, not allegedly, there's evidence, there was tickets bought, attended over 30 games at more than 10 Big Ten stadiums featuring teams that Michigan would later be playing. That is for sure. There's also video. There's video surfacing of Michigan versus Ohio State last season. So there's video surfacing of Michigan versus Ohio State last season where you can see Connor Stallions and the defensive coordinator looking at the Ohio State sideline, seeing the signal, and then telling Ohio State this is going to be a pass, that kind of deal. What does that tell you? To me, that tells me that, okay, so this staffer was at the games, very likely scouting signs, for sure at the games though. And then you see him on the sideline and you say, very clearly saw the signs and then gave the key to the defense. What you don't have there is proof that he was taking video of signs. And that's where they need to get you. Because it's not illegal to scout teams. It's illegal to take video of teams, go to games, take video, and use that video of sidelines and coaches and all that kind of stuff to give yourself an unfair advantage. That's the illegal part. That's the part that Michigan's in trouble for. But as far as I'm aware, there's no hard facts there. So I don't know where this is going. It feels really bad for Michigan because the sheer volume that this is getting talked about. But I'm very interested to see what else comes out on this topic. That being said, TCU was tipped off about this in the playoffs last year. So TCU was tipped off by other programs that Michigan was stealing signs. And they had staffers going to games, taking video of signs and signals and all that kind of stuff, and using that to create an advantage. TCU knew that, switched up their signs, and won the game. Now, if that had any effect on the game, I don't know. But the larger issue here is why, if this was known last year by TCU and by other programs who tipped off TCU, why did this not come out sooner? And I think that goes hand in hand with why whenever you see Deion Sanders talking about the sign stealing issue, and he said, hey, look, you can give somebody the playbook, they still got to go do it effectively, and they still got to beat you. And then you see Kirby Smart, how he said it. He said whenever he played Michigan, he said there was nothing to lead me to believe Michigan was stealing signs, and everybody kind of took that as like a dig to Michigan, saying we whooped up on Michigan, it didn't matter, that kind of thing. I think what you're seeing here is seeing all of that. Kirby Smart, Deion Sanders, TCU knowing about it from other programs. So you have at least 4 programs who have been, on record talking about this issue, and no one necessarily speaking negatively of it, leads me to believe that maybe not everyone's doing it, but nobody wants the NCAA investigating it. Michigan's going to take the fall for this, but I don't care who you're a fan of. You don't want the NCAA investigating your program on this. And I think that's pretty evident at this point. Do I have any facts to bring that up or to back that up? I don't. But have some feel. Look around the college football room and tell me how these coaches are not calling out Jim Harbaugh and Connor Stallions and shooting this down and saying how horrible it is. It's because they don't want the NCAA investigating them for it. That's just my 2 cents. Let me know in the comments. or, if this is going to be a YouTube short or an Instagram reel or a TikTok, let me know. All right, number 3, Ohio State at Wisconsin. The line on this game is 14.5. Off top, do you have anything on this game? How do you feel about that 14.5 point line? Ohio State just beat Penn State.
I think that Ohio State covers right off jump for sure. I know that Wisconsin has a good defense and they're playing at Wisconsin. It's a night game, but I think Ohio State covers for sure. What do you think?
I don't know if I like Ohio State to cover, to be honest with you. I think that we've seen Ohio State really, honestly, struggle to cover. They started a lot of games slow. You can look at a lot of the games on their schedule so far. And Penn State, even against Penn State, they scored 20 points, but really it was 13 until Penn State decided to go for it on 4th and 4 from their own 43. Penn State turned the ball over in their own territory, gave Ohio State the ball back, and then went and scored. I think you've seen Ohio State struggle offensively a lot more than we expected to this year. And I don't know. And even when they didn't struggle, even when they are putting up 40 and 50 points, it's all coming in the second half. You haven't really seen Ohio State dominate 4 quarters of a football game. Now they got a really good win over Penn State. And there's no shade to Ohio State in that regard. I think that was a huge win for them. They needed that win. They proved themselves with that win that they can go beat an elite team like Penn State. But offensively, there's a concern. And I think if you're Wisconsin, the play here is run the damn ball. Braylon Allen is a hell of a running back. He's been solid for Wisconsin this year. And look, Wisconsin hasn't been everything that they wanted to be. But, Luke Fickell over there, he's in his first year. And look, he hasn't had time to build this program, but what he knows is Ohio State has struggled offensively. They're not what they were a year ago. And he's got Braylon Allen. I don't believe TreVeyon Henderson is available this week. If he is, then I apologize. But if he's not available this week, Wisconsin has the running back advantage. And I don't know that Ohio State covers this handily. I think Ohio State's going to win the game. What?
TreVeyon Henderson is a full go.
He's a full go? Okay, in that case, then it does. Well, hold on. No, in that case, it does change things a little bit. If TreVeyon Henderson is a full go this week, then it is I think they're what and what in terms of running backs. I still might give the slight nod to Braylon Allen. I think TreVeyon Henderson's a running back that, his freshman year, we all kind of expected him to be one of the best running backs in college football, and he was trending that way, but he never, after his injury, he never really came back to that same status. I think he's a running back with breakout potential, but Braylon Allen's broken out. And so if you're Wisconsin, you pound the football, you control time of possession, you have to find a way to convert on third down. Ohio State's been really good on third down this year. So if you're Wisconsin, that's the key to the game. If you can control time of possession and not give Ohio State time to kind of feel things out like they have in the past, you bring the fight to them, Wisconsin's going to find themselves in a ball game. I do expect Ohio State to win, but I don't know if I'm as comfortable as you are saying they're going to clear that 14.5 handily. So, number 4, Florida State at Wake Forest. Florida State's a 20.5 point favorite. I think this is about right. Florida State's the only unbeaten team in the ACC. Wake Forest has put up a couple fights this year, but Florida State's the best team in the ACC for a reason. Wins over Clemson and Duke at this point. They got taken to the wire by Boston College. And I think that is, while Boston College is not one of the best teams in the ACC, I think that is one of the most important wins for them because they got punched in the mouth. Things didn't go they wanted it to go, and they hung in there. They showed grit. They showed fight, found a way to score on defense late, and won that game. I think that's, to me, that is the true test of a good football team. If you can go out and do things effectively, or if you can go out and play efficiently all game and have your game plan go the way you wanted it to go, like it did against Clemson, and like it did against Duke even late in that game, then of course that is ideal and that's what you want. But when nothing goes the way you want it to and you give up over 100 rushing yards to a quarterback and you find yourself in a 2-point game with less than a minute to play against Boston College and you find a way to win, I find that to be really impressive. Do I think that is a staple win on their schedule and the College Football Playoff Committee is going to point at that and be like, hey, look at this win over Boston College? No, of course not. I don't think so. But I think when determining the true value of a football team and looking at the grit and saying this team is a team that can take punches and they can have things go the wrong way and they can have a game plan not work out and they're still going to find a way to beat you, that's a solid football team. I think they cover the 20.5. Washington's at Stanford. Washington's a 26.5 point favorite. Washington didn't score 26 or 27 last week. You can't score 26.5. But they didn't score 26 last week. I think you see that change. I think this is a bounce back game for Michael Penix Jr. Romeo Dunze is a solid wide receiver. He's one of the best receivers in the nation. And I think you see that play out in full effect this week. I don't expect Stanford to really put up a fight. They did against USC. But I don't expect Stanford to really put up a fight. I think Washington's going to go in there and dominate, and you're going to see them get right back on track. Kalen DeBoer is not a coach that's going to go out there and allow his team to struggle the way they did last week. You're not going to see the same thing again. That also last week could have been a little bit of a hangover from the Oregon game. Not making excuses, just saying what it could have been. They get back on track this week and win big against Stanford, at Stanford. Number 6, Oklahoma at Kansas. Oklahoma's a 9.5 point favorite. I think that line's actually a little bit too small. And the reason I say that is Kansas without Jalen Daniels is not a good football team. Defensively, they're really not great. Jalen Daniels is the piece to that team that makes them relevant right now. And as harsh as that is to say, it's the truth. Oklahoma's got a Heisman contender in Dylan Gabriel. They have a solid offense. They have a significantly better defense than they did last year. And right now, they're sitting at number 6 in the country with everything in front of them, likely the favorite to win the Big 12. And if they can get through the Big 12 unscathed, they're in the playoff. To me, what I'm looking for this week with Oklahoma is if they can establish the run and get it done efficiently the entirety of that game. I need to see, for me to feel comfortable about Oklahoma getting to the playoff, and once they get there, winning a game in the playoff, I need to know that they have the pieces to go run the ball effectively and create offense for themselves without having to throw the 15-yard ball, or without Dylan Gabriel having to do it himself. If they can do that, if they can efficiently run the ball for 4 or 5 yards a pop and get that average up a little bit, I'm going to feel much better about Oklahoma. But I do like them to beat Kansas and probably cover that 9.5. Texas versus BYU. Texas is a 19-point favorite. Quinn Ewers is out. We'll be seeing Malik Murphy this week. I like Malik Murphy. All we've really gotten to see of him this year was that spring game, and he balled. He looked like a dude in the spring game. That being said, BYU has not been a great team. You saw them beat Arkansas in overtime. That's not a huge win for them. But then you look at Arkansas, and I don't want to get into a slippery slope here, but you look at Arkansas and they took LSU to the wire. They lost that game by 3. They took Alabama to the wire, lost that game by 3. They lost by 7 to Mississippi State, or one of the Mississippi schools. So Arkansas is a team that, although they have 6 losses in a row now, which is rough, that is brutal. Although they have 6 losses in a row now, they're losing all of them except Texas A&M by 1 possession. They were in all of those games. BYU went and beat them. Now, I'm not saying that that's a huge win for BYU, but you go and play this Texas team without Quinn Ewers. I like BYU to cover the 19. I like Texas to win. I don't think it's ever in question, but I like BYU to cover the 19. All right, we have the next game I want to talk about is likely going to be the game of the week. At least we're calling it that. You have number 8 Oregon and number 13 Utah. Tickets to this game, averaging at about $120. That's too much, frankly.
That's for the cheapest ticket.
Yeah, I mean, the cheapest ticket at this game is $120. That's too much. Normal people don't pay $120 to go see a football game. Hopefully you have season tickets, but if you don't, save yourself $20. Don't pay $120. You know, pay the $100 if you have to, but don't pay the $120. You're asking Joe, how do I save these $20? Well, you go to SeatGeek. Okay, it's right there in the bottom left hand of your screen. Use code 10-second runoff. That's 10 SECOND RUNOFF at SeatGeek. They're going to give you $20 off your first purchase. So go do that. Tell your friends. Y'all go to the game. This one's primed to be a really, really good one. Oregon is a 6.5-point favorite. I look at this Oregon team. I see Bo Nix. After this weekend, he'll have the most starts of any college football player in FBS history. I see Bucky Irving. I see Troy Franklin. I see a really solid defense, a really solid Dan Lanning-led defense. I see a big team, a strong team, a physically imposing team. And I find it hard to find holes. But I look at Utah, and I see a team that to this point has one loss. To this point has 2 losses and are still not out of the conversation for the Pac-12. They've kind of settled in with Bryson Barnes to this point. Cam Rising's out for the year. Brent Keithy is not available for this game. But this Utah team they've done what they always do. They found a back who can run the ball, and they've been quite solid doing that. Defensively, they're physically imposing. This is a very stereotypical Utah team who, even without the leader of this team, without the starting quarterback, has found ways to go win games. And I've been impressed with them. I think they saw Colorado, and they saw what Deion. A couple of teams have done this now, but they saw what Deion was doing with Travis Hunter, and they said, you know what? Why don't we run Sione Vaki out there and let him run the ball? The starting strong safety, by the way. Let him run the ball offensively, and he, just broke off 200 yards last game. So this is a team that's never out. Even if you date back last year, and I know this is adding Dalton Kincaid and it's adding Cam Rising, but you go back to the Pac-12 championship last year, and they got down. What was it? They got down 16 points, and were never out. They found a way to go in and win that game, and not just win that game, but dominantly for the last 3 quarters. And I think you still see that. That culture is very much alive. Kyle Whittingham, one of the longest tenured coaches in college football, he leads a team that does not quit. Bryson Barnes, now a captain of that team, and although Bryson Barnes is not Cam Rising, you see him drop his shoulder. Yeah, he's a fearless player, and I think he is good enough to keep Utah in this game for quite a while. I have Oregon in my top 10 power ratings. I do not have Utah in my top 10 power ratings. I expect Oregon to win this game. They should win this game. But I'm going to set the line at 2.5. I like Utah to cover, and I would not be shocked if they found a way to win. But I am taking Oregon. So this is one that I'm going to be keeping an eye on all week, or at least till Saturday, and I'll be plugged into this game watching it. If Utah finds a way to beat Oregon, Oregon's, for all intents and purposes, done. They'll have 2 Pac-12 losses, and could still ruin some seasons. But at that point, you'd have to think they were out of the playoff conversation. So this is one I'll be watching. Number 9, Alabama's on a bye. We'll keep an eye on them. They typically win their byes, so we'll see. Number 10, Penn State versus Indiana. Penn State's a 32-point favorite. James Franklin covers. Okay, now he didn't last week in that loss to Ohio State, and I'll touch on it just real briefly again. I think Penn State started playing scared in the fourth quarter. Their last, they scored on their final possession, but the two previous possessions they went for it on fourth down. One of them being in their own territory, and that cost them the game. They gave Ohio State an extra 7 points and ended up, scored the next possession. Had they not done that, had they trusted the best defensive unit in the entire nation, not just on their team, but the entire nation, to try and get one more stop against Ohio State and put their offense on the field one more time, you might have seen a different game. That being said, you didn't. All that said, Indiana is not Ohio State. And previously to that Ohio State game, Penn State was 6-0 or 7-0 against the spread. 6-0 against the spread. I love Penn State to cover the 32 simply because they do. As a matter of fact, we locked it, and we locked it not at the 32. We dropped it down to 22.5, and I feel really good about that. Number 11, Oregon State at Arizona. Oregon State's a 3-point favorite, and you might say, why is it that Oregon State is only a 3-point favorite to Arizona? Well, it's because Arizona's been balling the last several games. They damn near beat USC. They took them to, triple overtime or quadruple overtime? Triple overtime? Yeah, took USC to triple overtime. They took Mississippi State to overtime earlier in the year.
Lost to Washington by only one score.
Yep, and beat the brakes off Washington State. So Arizona is a team that offensively, especially with Fafita at quarterback, they have I always struggle with the receiver's name, but he's balling over 100 yards for 3 or 4 games in a row now.
Jonah Coleman.
Okay. Is that?
They have Jonah Coleman. I don't know how to say this guy's first name. But his last name is McMillan.
Oh, no, not him.
We got Tatoria McMillan. That could be who you're thinking of. We also got Tanner McLaughlin and Montana Lemorius Craig.
All right. Well, there you go. It sounded like a Key and Peele skit. What, dude? Yeah, so regardless, Arizona has been really, really good offensively. And honestly, I think the most impressive thing I've seen out of Arizona, including their receiver room and, Fafita just balling as a redshirt freshman, the most impressive thing I've seen out of them in the last several weeks was holding Washington State to 6 points. And then specifically seeing what Washington State did last week and Cameron Ward throwing for 400 yards again. How Arizona was able to combat that was really, really interesting. I like the respect they're getting here with that spread being set at -3 for Oregon State. Oregon State's got a really good defense. DJ Uiagalelei has played better than he did last year at Clemson. They like to run the ball. They like to control time of possession. If they're going to win this game, that's going to be really, really important because Arizona's going to score. This is a must win for Oregon State if they're going to be in that conversation for the Pac-12. Being number 11 in the country is mad respect to them. Damn it, Mikey. I think I'm going to do it.
Are you going to do it?
I think I'm going to take Arizona here.
Do it. Do it.
Yeah.
Lock it in.
All right, I'm locking it in. I got Arizona. And I do think this is a close game. I would not be shocked to see a game like this go to overtime. I've just seen Arizona play so many close games and play so well offensively in the last several weeks. And I do think Oregon State's a really, really good team. But I don't know. I don't know if whenever you look at passing yardage and what to expect out of these two, I don't think DJ is going to be able to hang in there and out-duel Fafita. And if that's what it comes down to, I got to go with Arizona.
I like Arizona to win this one too.
Okay. All right, well, let's move on. Number 12, Ole Miss versus Vandy. Ole Miss is a 24-point favorite. They very well – they might hang 45. Yeah. Vandy blows.
Vandy's on your shit list.
Dude, Vandy's great at baseball. They're great in education. Nashville.
Not great at football.
Huh?
They're not great at football.
Nashville's awesome. All of that. Everything around Vandy, great. Their football team is abysmal, and there will be no punches pulled. We locked Vandy in week 1 because I had their back and said that they weren't one of the worst teams in college football, and they let me down. They let me down bad, and Ole Miss is going to skull drag Vanderbilt this week. They get Vandy in the vault, and yeah, there's no shot. There's no shot. They're going to do the whole anchor down thing, and it's not going to happen. Juice, the golden retriever over there, Lane's dog. Is it a lab or a golden retriever? Whatever it is, Juice might score. Vandy sucks. Flip the camera. Tell me something.
I mean, yeah, Vandy is not good. Their stadium sucks. It's under construction. I don't want to just drag Vandy.
Why, bro? They're good at everything else. Let them, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Well, the stadium's under construction. We've been calling it the Boneyard all year because they literally have construction going on during games.
Yeah.
So shout out to those construction workers getting that overtime pay to watch a shitty football team. That's always kind of cool. But, yeah, I wouldn't be shocked if Ole Miss wins by like 30 or 40.
Yeah.
Starters pulled in the second quarter. I don't think it's going to be close.
Yeah, their starters won't be pulled in the second quarter. I think what happens is you see Jackson Dart throw for 2 or 3 touchdowns really quickly, and then you see Quinshon Judkins run it. I mean, I think he clears 100 yards rushing. I think Jackson Dart clears. I mean, I don't want to pick an over/under on pass yards because I do think he gets pulled eventually, but I would not be shocked to see him cover 300 yards. Yeah, this is a beatdown waiting to happen. If you're a Vanderbilt fan, I'm sorry. Baseball season's not super far. You just hang in there. Number 14, Notre Dame versus Pitt. Notre Dame's a 20.5-point favorite. I don't know if I like that line.
As in it's too close, or as in you don't think Notre Dame's going to cover?
I don't know if Notre Dame covers that. Do I think they're capable of covering that? Yes. But what, you about to say something? No? Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think you saw a tired and worn down Notre Dame team from the stretch of Ohio State, Duke, Louisville. But they got back on the right track. You saw them beat USC, played really well. Got those 3 turnovers in the first half, and Notre Dame turned a new leaf. That being said, you saw Pitt. Pitt hasn't been great this year, and I'm not trying to say Pitt's a good enough team to go beat Notre Dame. That's not the case. But I don't feel like this is a beatdown waiting to happen. Something about this game leads me to believe I would have set the line at 17 and a half. Again,
so it's off by 3 points.
Yeah, again, never in question. I think Notre Dame is the much better team, but I don't think this is like a beatdown all game.
So you think it's going to be one of those games where the box score doesn't tell the whole story?
Yeah.
Where like Notre Dame wins that game, but if you watch that game, it's like, it wasn't a great game. Is that what you're thinking?
I think turnovers are the difference. Like, I think Pitt's going to be able to move the ball, and I know that's. I understand. I feel gross saying that because Notre Dame has a good defense. They have a great secondary. But I think Pitt's going to score. Like, I think they'll probably put up 20, 24 points. Yeah, maybe not that many, but I think they put up 17 to 24 points. And if that's the case, I don't know if I like Notre Dame to go put up 45. You know what I mean?
That's fair.
So I think turnovers are the difference. I think if Pitt goes up and scores 17 to 20 points, I do think you see probably 2 turnovers Notre Dame's way. And again, Notre Dame wins it by 2 to 3 possessions, but 17-ish. And again, yeah, I don't think it feels close. I think it feels like Notre Dame was, running away the whole time, or not running away, but we're in control the whole time. But I don't like them to cover the 20.5. Number 15 LSU and number 16 Missouri are both on byes. These are 2 really interesting teams, by the way. LSU has 2 losses, one to Florida State and one to Ole Miss, so only one SEC loss. they still have to go play Alabama. And so if LSU beats Alabama and Georgia beats Ole Miss later in the year, then LSU could find themselves back in the SEC championship. That's a long shot. They don't necessarily control their own destiny. They would still need Ole Miss to lose to Georgia. And they'll have to beat Texas A&M at the end of the year too. So this is
Florida.
Huh?
And Florida as well.
No.
LSU plays Florida.
Oh, LSU plays Florida. I'm sorry. Yeah, I thought you were saying Florida to beat Georgia. Yeah, two different divisions. Gotcha. I'm following you now. Yeah, so look, this is still a long shot. LSU's got a lot of games to go win, but an interesting team nonetheless, and right there in the mix with the SEC West. Missouri, only a one-loss team. That loss being to LSU. So, they're still gonna get Georgia and Florida, and Tennessee. So this Missouri team is all of a sudden really, really interesting. If they can find a way to go get, again, very similar to LSU, they're still, right now, Missouri is still in the mix for the SEC East, and could potentially find themselves getting back to Atlanta for the first time since 2014 when they entered the SEC. There's a chance they can find themselves there, but they got to go win some really, really big games. What was it?
2014.
2014. They can still find themselves in the SEC championship, but it's going to be behind Brady Coke and Luther Burden, and they would have to. It's a long shot for both of these teams, for LSU and Missouri. If either of them were to get to the SEC championship, I'm not laying my money there, but there's a chance. And these are two teams that could cause some chaos in the SEC. Both on bye. Number 17, North Carolina at Georgia Tech. North Carolina is only an 11-point favorite. Georgia Tech's not good. Okay, and I say that, and I kind of always say that because I do believe that to be true. But they have a win over Miami, and that was a good win for them. But you go back, you look at the schedule and you're like, oh, Georgia Tech beat Miami. But we all saw what happened. Miami ran the ball.
Miami lost that game.
Miami lost that game. They did not.
And you did too.
I lost the game. Yeah. You're such a.
This is such a stupid bit, and we do it every show.
Now, granted, Georgia Tech was in that game. Did they deserve to win it? Did they deserve to? Maybe, because they went out and executed after they recovered the fumble. In 3 plays, they went right down the field and scored. So props to them for that. But they shouldn't have won that game, but they were in it. So, I don't think Georgia Tech's a good team. I don't think they have they're not competing for anything in the ACC. But we've seen them cause problems for good teams. Miami's still in the mix. We've seen Georgia Tech cause problems for good teams. To me, that's the only reason this is an 11-point spread. North Carolina is going to dominate them. I like North Carolina to cover that by a wide margin. I think you see Drake May throw for 315 yards. I could see 4 touchdowns on the day. The North Carolina offense is too powerful. So that's where I'm at. Moving on. 18 Louisville versus number 20 Duke. Louisville's a 4.5-point favorite. I believe Duke is still without Riley Leonard. Can you check me on that, please? I believe Duke's without Riley Leonard. If that's the case, it's going to be hard not to take Louisville here. Louisville's a 4.5-point favorite. They've been good offensively. You saw them dominate Notre Dame the way they did. They could have gotten a beat-up, tired Notre Dame team at the time. I don't know that Louisville would be favored by double digits if they played Notre Dame again. But nonetheless, that's the common opponent. What you got?
It says he's still uncertain, and they're taking it day to day.
Yeah, so let's assume Riley Leonard's not playing because day to day, we don't have many days left. I mean, they play Saturday. So, so Notre Dame is the common opponent that Louisville and Duke have, and Notre Dame beat Duke by 1 possession, the game that Riley Leonard got hurt, and Louisville beat the piss out of Notre Dame. So I know that's not a fair way to judge a game. You can't transitive property college football. It's not how it works. But I do think right now Louisville's more complete. Duke likes to run the football. Riley Leonard was a big part of that. They have a solid defense, as does Louisville. I think Louisville's offense gets it done here, though. I don't mind the line being at 4.5, but I would bump it up just a little bit. I'd bump it up just a little bit. I'm going to take Louisville to win by. I like them with a solid 1 possession, but no more than 2 possessions. So, 19 Air Force at Colorado State. Air Force is -13. Yeah, I think that's fair. Colorado State's got a gritty defense, but I don't think you're going to see too much. Like, this isn't going to be a super high-scoring game, in my opinion. I like Air Force to win. I don't know if I like them to cover the -13. I don't know, man. I don't know how I feel about this one. I'm gonna go Air Force with the win, but I'm gonna go Colorado State to cover the 13 at home.
That's fair.
All right, number 21, Tennessee at Kentucky. Tennessee's a 3.5-point favorite. Go to Tennessee's. That was a devastating loss last week to Alabama, up 20-7 at half, and then just getting obliterated in the second half. That's devastating. Go to their first loss against Florida. They got ran all over. Well, what's Kentucky's MO? Ray Davis. This is going to be a problem for Tennessee. On top of that, Tennessee just lost, one of the best corners, or their best corner for the season. He's having season-ending surgery. So I think you see a Tennessee team with holes in the run defense down their best corner. So that is very, very, very tricky for them defensively. I would not be shocked to see Kentucky go win this game. I said earlier Tennessee is going to be big Florida fans in this Georgia game because they need Georgia to get that first loss so that Tennessee can try to get the head-to-head over Georgia later where it would matter in terms of the SC championship. But if you're Tennessee, you got to get past Kentucky first, and I think Ray Davis is going to be just enough to will Kentucky to a win here. I'm going Kentucky to pull the upset in a one-possession game.
Interesting. I like that take. I like that take a lot, actually.
Okay. 22 Tulane at Rice. Tulane's a 10.5-point favorite. If Tulane doesn't beat Rice by more than 10.5, that would be disappointing. I think Tulane wins by a significant margin. 23 UCLA versus Colorado. UCLA -17 is the spread. Yeah, I think everybody's kind of moved on. Haven't heard a lot about Colorado since what was it, week 4?
Ever since they dropped out of the top 25, it kind of just fizzled out.
The most recent thing we've heard about Deion Sanders was him commenting on the Michigan ordeal. So I think that's – now, granted, I was going to say that was because Colorado hasn't been impressive this year, and I'll take that back. I think they have been impressive. They exceeded expectations 100%. Had a lot of people telling me Colorado's overrated and this, that, and the other and blah, blah, blah. They exceeded expectations. I think individuals overrated Colorado, but the Vegas set the preseason win total at 4. Well, I think they're going to clear that. That being said, I don't think odds makers were overrating Colorado. I think it was individuals who wanted to see Deion be successful who ended up overrating Colorado within their own mind. I think Colorado has been fine this year in terms of what they should be expected to do. Maybe not people's expectations, but what their expectations should be. I think they've done that and been fine. I mean, they went head-to-head with USC, got the win over TCU, found ways to win some games late. So respect to them where it's due. But UCLA is a really good football team. Their run game is great. Their run defense is really good. Dante Moore's been solid as a quarterback. Chip Kelly is a great offensive mind, one of the best coaches in the Pac-12 in my opinion. I think you just see a more physically imposing UCLA team than Colorado. In the trenches on both sides, UCLA is going to have their way. And I think you see, the spread at 3 possessions is already like very much giving UCLA the props they deserve. I think that's a fine spread. I think that's totally fair. I would not be shocked to see UCLA dominate, though.
Agreed, especially, like you said, up front in the trenches. I think that's how UCLA wins this game.
Yeah, and I think they win it. I think there's a multitude of ways that UCLA can win this game, but I think that's how they
will win it.
Yeah, I agree. 24 USC at Cal. USC is only a 10.5-point favorite. They opened the season in the top 5. They find themselves sitting at number 24 right now, right on the brink of even being ranked, and ranked one spot behind UCLA in their own city. Setting up for a really fun rivalry game in the last week of the year. But yeah, this spread is far too close to be against Cal. Defensively, USC has to be a lot better. If they don't figure out, if they can't hold Cal to less than 20 points, because look, USC is going to go score. They're going to put up 40 points. If they put up 40 points and don't cover the 10.5, everyone in LA is going to want Alex Grinch's head. I mean, if they don't already, they're insane. We've been talking about this for quite some time. We've talked about it with USC fans and people in our comment sections on Instagram. But we've been saying this since Alex Grinch was at Oklahoma. The second Lincoln Riley took the job at USC and brought Alex Grinch along with him, I was like, oh, this guy's never going to learn. And not that I know anything more than Lincoln Riley. That's not what I'm saying at all. But, I mean, look, Stevie Wonder could see it. I mean, you can't.
He can't see much.
They're not good at defense. That's not their forte. So, yeah, if USC doesn't cover the 10.5, and I'm going to take them too, but if USC doesn't cover the 10.5, there's going to be some real problems. And at some point, the problem for me, right, defensively, has been Alex Grinch. Have they gotten some good recruits? Yeah, they went into the transfer portal and gotten some guys. But the scheme has been bad, man. They can't stop the run. They don't get enough pressure. They get some pressure, but they don't get enough pressure, and they can't stop the run. That's a big problem. And my critique has always been on Alex Grinch for that. But at some point, when you're 4 and 5 years deep with the same problem across 2 programs, at what point does it become Lincoln Riley's inability to make the changes? At what point is winning not a priority for him? Because if it's about friendship and if it's about keeping your people in-house, that's a different conversation we can have. But if you want to go win championships, when you have, the former Heisman winner and guys like Brendan Rice and, just amazing talents on your team, there's no reason you should have 2 losses right now. I'm not a USC fan. I also don't hate USC. I'm indifferent to USC. But as someone who watches football and loves football, it's frustrating to see those talents be wasted because of a head coach's inability or lack of wherewithal or lack of care to go and make the changes necessary to win football games and be competing for a national championship. To me, if Alex Grinch is the defensive coordinator at USC in 2024, and I'm not calling for anybody's job, I'm not that's never what I want to do. I would rather see Alex Grinch make changes. If he stays on staff and he just makes the changes necessary to get USC into the top 30 in defense, well, then all of a sudden you got a championship contender. But if not, and if nothing changes within Alex Grinch's defensive scheme, something's got to change within Lincoln Riley's. Do with that information what you will, but if there's not a change made in either of those sections by 2024, then it's just going to be a long era for USC fans. They're going to be ranked, they're going to be competing, and they're going to have high hopes every year and never quite make it. And that's a sucky place to be. I mean, it's much better than having 2 wins like you did 2 years ago. So it's much better than that. But it's a sucky place to be, to know that you're good enough to be in championships and not there. So I think something's got to give at either the defensive coordinator or not the head coaching job, but either the defensive coordinator scheme or the head coach's ability to make the changes necessary. Number 25, James Madison versus Old Dominion. James Madison's a 20.5-point favorite. I don't like that line. Old Dominion played Pitt close. I just think about this game. I don't think James Madison would go out and dominate Pitt. I don't think they would dominate a lot of Power 5 teams. I think they've played a lot of inferior opponents. And that's not to say James Madison is bad or anything like that. Hell, they're good. They're favored in all the rest of their games, and they're undefeated to this point. So I think they're truly a solid team, but I don't like the 20.5-point spread. I would love to come back next week and say I was wrong. James Madison won by 40. That would be crazy. I don't believe that's the case, but we'll see. What else we got this week, Mikey?
Want to go over our locks?
Locks. Our locks. We have Utah plus 16.5. That's against Oregon. Again, I said I wouldn't be shocked to see Utah win this one. I did take Oregon in a one-possession game, but I think there's a way Utah wins. That's minus 310 odds on FanDuel. Penn State minus 22.5 to Indiana. Again, I think Penn State covers the 32. We just dropped it down 10 points. That's minus 340. That's to me, that's cake. Penn State's covered every week outside of last against Ohio State. So at this point, they're 6-1 against the spread. I love those odds. Florida State minus 9.5 against Wake Forest. That's minus 330 odds. Florida State's a good football team. Like you saw them in a battle with Duke last week, and then they would have covered this against Duke. I think this is. I have no issues here. I don't think Utah loses by 3 possessions. I think Penn State has been solid, and they've explicitly went and tried to cover so far a lot this year. So I think we see that they very well could cover the 32. And then, like I said, Florida State, top 5 team. If the season were to end right now, they'd be in the playoff. So I feel really good about these. This gets your total odds to plus 123. Not telling you to take this, not telling you what amount to spend on this. But if you were to spend $100, you could make 123 if this hits. So do with that information what you will. If you're going to any of the games this week, do not forget, go to SeatGeek. Use code 10SecondRunoff. That is 10 SECOND RUNOFF for $20 off your first purchase at checkout. We will see you all next week.